Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 15th of October, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar sinking lower over the last week and still bearish on the short term chart. The medium term still bullish, but we are just seeing a pullback in the dollar. And looking at the euro, we're seeing that the euro is actually looking stronger against the dollar. Japanese yen is where we normally see the dollar strength or weakness showing up first, and it's making new lows this morning. A flight to quality we tend to see the yen as a safe haven. So whilst we've got a little bit of turmoil still in the markets, we're seeing that push to new lows. Sterling falling this morning as well on Brexit hopes fading, hopes of a deal on the hold at the moment, so that's just affecting sterling. So we're still short-term bearish, medium-term. We just haven't managed to break above the cloud here we see on the lagging line. Looking at sterling against the euro, we were looking quite good for a transition last week, not yet on the long-term chart, but again weaker this morning. And against the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling falling away too at 130, just hitting resistance there. And against the Aussie dollar lower as well. So sterling across the board is falling. Bitcoin up quite sharply this morning, up nearly 4%, and so pushing higher there. Still medium term bearish though, so interestingly we're teetering along the support level at around the 6,000 mark. Just can't really break out of that area, but we've touched 6,700 this morning. We've come right back, so we're seeing quite a bit of volatility there. U.S. stock markets closed higher on Friday, ending a pretty bad week. We see that we were still down quite significantly. The Nasdaq actually recovered quite sharply, up 2.7%, but still bearish on that medium and short-term chart. So that doesn't really change the picture that we are seeing this change. Interesting, the Dow looking a little bit like a double top now, where we're making the same level that we saw at the start of the year. If we break below these levels that we saw of the recovery, that would be very bad for the Dow. We are just holding the medium-term trend, but and even short-term, we are finding some support down here on the 60-minute point and figure chart. The Russell 2000, the broader-based US index, looking very bearish now, having broken down through the cloud on that medium-term chart and really didn't recover on Friday. So not all stocks made that recovery. We're seeing the smaller stocks are still looking pretty sold off and didn't recover. The S&P is down. The future this morning down 0.5%. The Nasdaq E-mini also down nearly just under 1%. So it does suggest US markets are set to open lower, and UK markets also. Looking at the DAX future, we also see as the sell-off there. Looking at the cash indices, the FTSE testing new lows this morning. It did open a little bit higher, but it's selling off already. So FTSE just struggling and falling away there. Mid caps looking particularly weak, about to enter long-term bear trend. So that's on the cloud chart on the weekly. So that's not looking so good, and the DAX also looking pretty weak as well. CAC Quarante down some 0.4% this morning. So again, making new lows. Market's just not enjoying the backdrop at the moment, and the Japanese market down 1.5% overnight. Hang Seng down 1.4%, and the Shanghai market down 1.5%. And Shanghai is still our biggest worry, activating last week. This downside target some 43% lower, making new 4-year lows. So that is a worry. Still hanging over markets in Asia. The Indian market actually was fairly flat, up very slightly, and the Aussie market was down 1%. So we're seeing here also the sell-off occurring as well. Brent crude is up $0.50 this morning, sitting at $80. So it hasn't really bounced. It looked like it might bounce on the news of Saudi tensions increasing, but interestingly, it hasn't really jumped. And the same with WTI, so we're short-term bearish here. US nat gas sitting at $3.18, back into short-term bearish mode, but the medium and long-term charts looking a lot better. One beneficiary of the market uncertainty at the moment is gold. We're seeing gold hitting really now like 3-month highs. We haven't seen these levels since July, so that's looking pretty good for gold. And we've activated a new upside target of 1302 on the gold price. So looks like we might see significant recovery. We're sitting at 1227 this morning. Interestingly, we're on the verge of making this long-term transition on the medium-term chart. We still have work to do, but we do have these long-term upside targets still there. Silver also looking more bullish this morning. No upside target on that short-term chart, but still looking better. And the US 10-year yield sitting at 3.16%. German bonds actually looking a bit stronger this morning as the yields recede. Taking a look at some of the stocks we saw on Friday with the Nasdaq, quite a lot of movement in the index, up 2.7%, meaning that quite a few stocks were outperforming that well and truly. Amazon up 4%, finding support on the daily cloud. This is all Yahoo data, still outperforming the market by 36% in the year. Taking a look at Apple, we were 3.5% higher, also looking pretty strong at holding on quite well. Not all stocks are, of course, because we're seeing the Nasdaq falling away. And if we take a look at Google, one stock that has been weaker, and that bearish trend still persists there and underperforming the Nasdaq quite significantly. Other stocks in the news were Tesla up some 2.5%, looking better, but this 250 level is worrying for Tesla. Netflix had a fairly tough time of it as well, still bearish short term, having massively outperformed the market this year, just hasn't really managed to the last few months. Nvidia was another big performer, having had an amazing 12 months. We're seeing Nvidia bouncing back, and Microsoft did sell off quite heavily in the week, but again finding medium-term support. So the large caps looking pretty good. Taking a look at FTSE this morning. Just looking at the big changes, we're seeing here it tends to be a lot of the commodity stocks. We're seeing here uh, uh, Shell Group on the oil price still not looking great on the medium term. BP also not looking quite as strong as it should, but still holding the long-term trends and long-term upside targets. The stocks underperforming, still more fallers than gainers. We're seeing that really across the board. A lot of the banking stocks down this morning. Brexit woes probably not helping there. Lloyd's down, Schroders down. Financial stocks really looking a lot weaker and bearish below the cloud. So seeing multiple downside targets there. That's Prudential, Royal Bank of Scotland, looking also still pretty bearish. So that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.